Hi, everyone. My name is Alice Morrison. I am the co-executive director of policy and development for Friends of Family Farmers. And today is Wednesday, February 28th, 2024, and we are talking about what the heck is going on in this time and place of the 2024 short session here in the Oregon legislature. So today I wanted to give you a couple of updates. We are more than halfway through the session, and tomorrow, in terms of a calendar update, tomorrow is the deadline for second chamber policy committee votes. So that means that anything that is not in a rules committee, a revenue committee, or the Ways and Means committee has to be voted out of its policy committee by the end of the day tomorrow. So tomorrow is a big deadline in terms of this short session. It goes so quick, but the sine die, which is the official and required end of the session, is on March 10th this year. So we got to get things wrapped up. And the biggest thing that I am here to talk to you about today is SB 4059. Actually SB 4059A. And that is the Specialty Seed Willamette Valley Protected District canola bill. Just as a reminder of where we've been with this, this bill was prompted by SB 789 last year, which sought to make the current restrictions on growing canola, also known as rapeseed, as in the Willamette Valley Protected District. That protected district was established back in about 2012 in order to protect brassica specialty seed production in the Willamette Valley. We are a very, very lucky group of people here in the Willamette Valley in Oregon because we have the right soil and climate and geography in terms of the natural features that help us connect the dots on seed production. There are not very few regions in the world that can grow specialty brassica seeds. And that means that some varieties, over 90% of that variety, is grown right here in the Willamette Valley Protected District. So this is an incredibly special and unique industry. It also, you know, a lot of those varieties are considered heritage or heirloom varieties, and they contribute to the biodiversity of our food supply, which is important when we're talking about pest and disease pressure, as well as resiliency in an uncertain climate future. Also, specialty seed production is incredibly special, to use that word again, in terms of how it can support small farmers on small acreages. And I'm sorry that I'm going over things again that you may have heard before, but it's really important to ground ourselves in like why this is important before we get into the nitty-gritty of the policies. So the reason that FOF has so many farmers who are very interested in this is because specialty seed production is a way to run a viable farm business on very little land. And we all know how fraught the farmland access landscape is, with Oregon's history of racist exclusion laws that did not allow people of color to buy land in this state. And then also that compounding over the decades with various farm crises, and now where we are, where farmland has become a speculative commodity. And there are a lot of people who are not farmers and don't intend to farm that land, looking at farmland as a good investment. And that contributes to rising farmland costs and the exclusion of people who actually want to work the land from the ability to purchase it. So when you do get a hold of a small plot of land, you want to run a viable farm business that is in alignment with your values and the ecological stewardship that you want to do. Seed farming is a great way to do that. There was a study published by Highland Economics last year that looked into the as they say in their name, the economics of small specialty seed production. And it was revealed there that the average production or the average value of specialty seed production, the revenue, no, actually the profit, not the revenue, the profit was on average about $4,000 per acre for conventional seeds, and $40,000 per acre was the average profit for an organic specialty seed farmer. So if you're certified organic, you can be making a viable living on very little land. And many people make more than that. Some people make less than that. It's the average. When it comes to canola, those numbers look a lot different. Canola is a commodity field crop, and when we're talking about profit, in a per acre sense, that Highland Economics study showed that it was a little under $200 an acre. So though that study has been maligned by the canola side, saying that that's not true, but one person getting more than that per acre does not skew an average. So I want everyone to look out for anecdotal evidence and look at the averages, and that the Highland Economics firm has been used by the organic community. It has been used by the Farm Bureau. It has been used by people on all sides of the agricultural spectrum to find out, what are the economics of growing whatever crop you're thinking of. So when we think about this issue, we want to think about it as a holistic thing. Yes, it is a big deal to the ecological and biodiversity concerns of the valley, but it is also an economic factor for a lot of small farmers. So that being said, where are we now? We are most of the way through the session. HB 4059 is the bill that is dealing with this. It was a committee bill brought forward by Rep. Helm on behalf of the House Agriculture Committee. And that bill had a lot of input from a work group that was conducted by ODA over the summer. And all the way up, it started in about August, late July, August, and the last meeting of that work group was actually January, about a week before the session started. So we've been going at it. FOF was not a formal member of that work group. We were excluded from the work group, but our board member, Hank Keogh, who owns and operates Avoca Seed, is an organic specialty seed producer. He was on the work group, and we were allowed to be present, not to speak, but to be present during the work group meetings. We have also been heavily involved in helping to educate legislators on this topic. It is a little bit of a niche subject, and I think that lots of folks are using that to their advantage because it is considered a pretty tricky topic to wrap your head around. But plant biology, thankfully, does not change based on political whims, and we have some sources and an understanding of this issue that cannot change based on people's political affiliations. So we came into this with the committee proposing a set of regulations that largely came out of the work group. Some of those we were not a fan of. Some of them were improvements on the current situation. Right now in the Willamette Valley Protected District, anybody is allowed to apply for a permit through ODA to grow up to 500 acres of canola. That's total, not per person, the total in the protected district. And then ODA facilitates pinning on the private association, the Willamette Valley Specialty Seed Association's pinning map, which is where specialty seed producers who are part of that trade association pin their crops to make sure there's not cross-contamination. So that is the current system, is just a flat cap on canola. And the stuff that was put forward in the original version, the -7 amendment that was not adopted on 4059, was a whole plethora of other regulations, some of which we thought were good. Right now, there are no isolation distances enshrined in law, and this would have established a state-run, or at least state-contracted pinning system, and mandated isolation distances of 3 miles for conventionally grown crops and conventional and organic, and then 6 miles for genetically engineered crops. And the -7 amendment also did put a cap of 500 acres. It lifted the cap on general canola, conventional or organic canola, and imposed a 500-acre cap on genetically engineered canola. So the reason that genetic engineering comes into this question is because organic producers can have not even an iota of genetically engineered material in their seed lots, because it's not compatible with organic certification and it makes you completely ineligible for that contract. It was also very, very difficult to eradicate once it's present in your seed stock. And the reason that canola is a problem in this way is because canola is one of only 2 commonly genetically engineered crops in the country. The other is cotton, that can crossbreed with not only many vegetable seed crops, because it is in the Brassica family, but also with native mustard plants. So it can very easily become a weed, and it's one of only 2 crops that are commonly genetically engineered in the country that has the potential to cross into native populations and become a weed in that way. It also has some seed dormancy characteristics that mean that seed that is dropped, even if you clean up all of your volunteers, that seed banks in the soil for many, many years and can keep coming back. So this makes it very hard to eradicate. It also makes it a good contender to infect native and weed populations with genetically engineered material, which could then further spread to organic seed crops and remove people's ability to grow in that market. It really, like, once that happens, there's no possibility that the organic seed industry can stay in this valley. So there were some things during the hearing where there were some, okay, let me back up. So the hearing in the House happened 2 weeks ago, and there was a huge sticking point between the specialty seed farmers that we represent and the canola farmers, who also came out in force for this issue. And it was a mixture of things about the acreage cap and the presence of language referring to genetically engineered crops differently than other crops within the language of the bill. And we could not come to an agreement because our farmers have given us a very, very clear directive that we cannot allow all regulations to go away. That is not a viable future for the organic or conventional specialty seed industry. And it's not a step that we are able to support or willing to take. So we did support the -7 amendment, but we made it very, very clear to our legislative partners that if that bill were to be weakened in any way, that we would not be able to support it any further. That was the end of our negotiations, not the beginning. And so I think the other side also made it very clear that they were not happy with the -7 amendment. And so what ended up being passed out of that committee was the -9 amendment, which is now engrossed. And that is the extension of the sunset from the current deadline, which is July of this year, and extending that to January of 2028, so that we would have the 2025 session, 2026 session, and 2027 session potentially to come back and make more policy, do further research, or engage in more conversations to get those regulations where they need to be for a compromise solution. And that passed out of the House and came over to the Senate, was assigned to the Senate Natural Resources and Wildfire Committee. And then on Tuesday, yesterday morning, there was an additional hearing in the Senate Natural Resources Committee on this new 4059A, the extension of the sunset. And FOF is very supportive of this bill. I testified to that effect at the hearing yesterday. We brought one of our specialty seed farmers who was able to make it with us as well to talk about her support for the extension of the sunset. Thank you, Alva Waterstone from Wild Child Seeds. We really appreciate you coming out. And then there was a lot of discussion about whether or not an extension of the sunset is ignoring the science. And there are a few studies that have been propped up as the science on this topic, which are incomplete and do not address cross-contamination. So because we're recording this and we're going to put this on our YouTube channel, and I just finished creating a little science primer document. Okay. Sorry, just everything's moving so quickly. I had to make sure that the text I just received did not change what I was about to tell you. Not that it could change science, but it might change what we ask everyone to do at the end of the day. So there was a study conducted in 2013 by Dr. Carol Mallory Smith, who is a professor emeritus at OSU. And that study was about pest and disease pressure risks from canola versus other brassica crops. And that did come out of a study of a bill that was mandated by the governor and the legislature to perform a working group and to do more research on whether or not a protected district was necessary. That was done way back at the beginning of the protected district a decade ago. And that study was what established the 500-acre cap in the first place. And that was in order to make sure that they had enough acreage to conduct a viable research study. And yes, that 500 number did come from the study, but that study did not include any mentions of transgenic gene flow or cross-contamination. And I will put something in the chat real quick. And this Google Doc that I just put in the chat is going up on our website, but I wanted to set the record straight that there is scientific documented proof of the harm and cross-contamination of canola on brassica specialty seed crops. There is also very hard evidence documenting the transgenic gene flow from feral canola populations on roadsides. That was actually done in 2011. We've known this for quite a while in North Dakota by a group of researchers headed up by Dr. Schaefer. And that study concluded that not only does canola very readily cross into weed populations, it creates novel new species of canola when doing so, and establishes new colonies of canola on roadsides along transport routes. Then we also have a study that was conducted in 2006 by Dr. Jim Myers, who was also from OSU, another researcher who differs in opinion from Dr. Carol Mallory Smith. And that study was conducted in 2006 on the possible harms of a large-scale canola industry on the Willamette Valley specialty brassica seed industry. And my favorite quote from that paper is, the best solution for introduction of canola into the Willamette Valley would be to maintain zones free of canola plantings and from traffic carrying canola seeds to crushing plants. So that is what coexistence looks like in terms of the science that Dr. Jim Myers conducted. And Dr. Jim Myers was on the working group that was brought forward from SB 789. And his position and his research has always focused on field crossing potential between different brassica species and within brassica species. So I think if anybody on the call is a farmer, you're aware of the brassica family, all of the cruciferous vegetables, and the fact that they have common ancestors. And so when we get into the nitty-gritty science of it, canola tends to be Brassica rapa or Brassica napus. And those two species do have a lot of other vegetable seeds within their species, but they also very readily cross between each other. And they cross to a lesser extent with Brassica oleracea, but still at concerning levels. And Brassica oleracea is where the majority of Brassica food crop species live. Although many cabbages and bok choys and other Asian greens in that family live in the Brassica napus and rapa side of the family. So thinking about it from that perspective, like that potential for gene flow is not going to change. That is a scientific fact. And I also wanted to highlight that we have some very clear examples of how other jurisdictions with similar considerations have handled this. For example, Washington. Washington has a lot of physical characteristics in common with Oregon. They also have a Brassica specialty seed industry in parts of Washington state. They there's a study that's often referenced. It's in this paper, this summary as well, the Inglis et al. Study from University of Washington. And that study was used very widely in creating the Washington regulations around this. And Washington has two Brassica seed production districts. District 1, canola is heavily regulated, and District 2, canola is not allowed at all. And so it's not like we're asking for something that does not exist in other places or has not been a solution to this same problem in other spaces. So that all being said, what's going on now is that this bill is going to have a work session tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. in the Senate Natural Resources Committee. And there will be a vote on whether or not this bill gets sent to the floor for a vote or stays alive by being sent to some kind of rules committee or some other way to keep it alive, likely rules if that was an option. And the third option is that the bill dies. And just to communicate like what's at stake here, if the bill goes to a floor vote in the Senate or goes to rules, then we will just have to keep talking about this over the next week and a half or so. And then if the bill dies, we are in some serious trouble because once that those restrictions sunset in July of this year, that means there is no protection. There's no requirement for pinning. There's no acreage cap on canola. There's no incentive or civil penalties that people could face for not being a good neighbor and talking to seed producers around you. That just means that all of it goes away. So when we are thinking about this issue as we move forward in the next couple days, we really, really, really need to avoid having that sunset expire. And our preference would be to maintain the 4059A and have more time to have these conversations. So we are asking for everyone in our community to submit some written testimony. Because the hearing was yesterday at 8 a.m., the deadline for written testimony is tomorrow, February 29th at 8 a.m. to submit written testimony on in favor of HB 4059A. There are some templates and more information on our website. And yeah, that is the end of my spiel on canola. I think I've been talking at you straight for 25 minutes. So how does that feel? Does anybody have any questions or concerns or comments on this topic? Yeah, there is a lot going on. It has been elevated to a place that it normally is not, because of, on the other side, there are some concerns about canola that haven't been present before. First, and I think foremost, there is a legislator who is on the House Agriculture Committee who is also a canola farmer. And that has elevated this issue to a partisan one, which is very unfortunate because I think a lot of people on any side of the aisle are very, very interested in having farmers be viable and have access to the specialty seed industry. And then also canola has been identified as a possible rotation crop for the grass seed industry. And although that remains pretty untested and is not necessarily it's not even necessarily, it is not the only option for grass seed farmers who are looking for a rotation crop. Grass seed yields and profitability have been going down in the Willamette Valley for quite a while, and it started to get pretty dire. And so when farmers are looking for an alternative, canola and the Commodity Association associated with canola has positioned itself as a savior to that industry, which there are plenty of other grain crops that you could grow using the same equipment that you can use for grass seed. And you could grow cover crop, you could grow wheat, you could grow lots of other grains that also have viable markets. But canola has been identified as this like savior crop for that industry, although there are only a handful of people in the valley who grow it right now. So yeah, it's a whole thing. There will be another hearing there'll be a work session tomorrow morning. And based on what happens there are still some amendments that have been proposed by canola proponents that FOF is opposed to. We are opposed to all amendments that are on the table at the moment. We would like, based on the sunset extension versus any of the amendments that have been proposed by canola proponents, we are in favor of the sunset extension. And that will come to a head tomorrow, and then we will have more to say. Yeah. So, yeah, that's our main.
Alice, can I just mention real quick that I sent out an email yesterday, and if you didn't get it, I can forward you that. But if anybody here has farmer friends that grow brassica seed or in industry, if you could forward that, that would be amazing. And also, if OLIS frightens you or you're overwhelmed by the process, we do have a video that kind of just goes over briefly of where to find everything and how to give testimony. So that might be helpful for those of you that find this process daunting.
Great. So, are there any other bills that people were hoping that we would talk about? Oh yes, and Brittany put in the chat, we did a little video on how to navigate the OLIS system, and OLIS stands for Oregon Legislative Information System, and that's how you find information on bills, track their progress, see any materials from hearings that people have put forward, and things like that. So, I did want to also mention one of our other priorities, the Oregon Agricultural Heritage Program. That bill, it is simply a funding ask for that program. And that was HB 4060. That bill is still in the Natural Resources Subcommittee on Ways and Means Subcommittee on Natural Resources, rather. Let me flip that back around. And I don't think that I have seen a draft of the omnibus spending bill, which is also lovingly known as the Christmas tree bill. But what I've been told is that this year there's $700 million in play for people to ask for through the legislature. The governor's housing bill would take about $500 million. So there is only about $200 million that can be distributed through other programs. And I know that sounds like a lot, but the Oregon Ag Heritage Program is asking for 10.8 million of that. And there are agency budget asks, there are other programs, there are some crises to intervene in terms of, you know, mental health and healthcare and wildfire prevention and all of these other issues outside of ag. So when we hear that there is an opportunity um an opportunity to weigh in on hopefully giving that bill its due, and at least a good portion of the funding that we've requested, that we will make that definitely available to you, and get as many people as possible to make it known that people care about the conservation funding, and the conservation and working lands easement funding that are in there to protect farmland. um Oh, I see a question from Kathleen in the chat. Hi, Kathleen. And would it be helpful to hear testimony from the public, i.e. consumers, on the canola issue? I think that at this point, any um information that the legislature can see about the true science behind the canola issue, the better. So I think that referencing any of those studies that were in that Google Doc that I sent you in your testimony, and making sure that they are not, and by they I mean legislators are not tricked into believing that there is no scientific basis for our fears, that would be very, very helpful. So whether you're a farmer, whether you're not a farmer, if you are willing to write your testimony centering on the scientific research in that Google Doc that I sent out, yes, we would love to have you submit that. And the governor's housing bill and UGB. Yeah. So okay. This bill we have not taken an independent position on. We are members of the Oregon Conservation Network, and so we have been working within that coalition to try to minimize all UGB expansion in any of these bills. So what it comes down to is, like, we very much acknowledge that there is a housing crisis, but when we think about UGB expansion as an answer, there's already a process for UGB expansion, and we are in favor of folks going through that process and not being given arbitrary authority to annex farmland near municipalities in general. And in this case, the numbers that I've seen, I think that they have gone down in an amendment of the bill, but they are still in the 50 to 100 acres per municipality range, and that is only net housing acres. So that could be quite a bit more when you take into consideration roads and other public infrastructure that go along with the housing that allows. We are not housing authorities. I don't want to position FOF in a place where we're making suggestions on housing policy, but we do know that land use and changing the land use outside of the UGBs and annexing land outside of the UGBs for this purpose is not supported by research to actually increase housing availability. I would direct folks to our partners, Thousand Friends of Oregon. We are very much, sometimes we are at odds with Thousand Friends when it comes to our definitions of agritourism and how we would like to see farmers be able to diversify their farm income by welcoming community members to the farm for workshops and things like that. But on this issue, we are 100% aligned with our partners at Thousand Friends. And we would love to see more investment within UGBs and incentivizing using the land within those existing boundaries before looking outside. And I think that's mostly because of the population of farmers that we serve is very, very much concentrated in, we do have farmers, you know, in deep rural areas, but a lot of our farmers who are selling into direct to consumer markets need proximity to a population center in order to feed people with their farm. So it becomes a land equity issue also, as we make this more housing land, and then it makes the land outside of the annexation more desirable to those speculative buyers that I talked about earlier, and continues to drive farmland prices up outside of what a person who wants to farm for a living can pay. So right now, this bill, we understand that this is a priority for the governor, and some version of this will probably move forward. And this is having its work session tonight at 5. So we'll know exactly what goes forward after that work session tonight. Yeah, I'm sorry that I don't have a stronger position or more to say on this topic, but it's slightly out of our purview, but the land use question within it is very much a concern to our farmers. But we've also heard that there needs to be more affordable housing within municipalities for farms who are close to municipalities to get workers and to have folks who can afford to live close enough to be employees on the farm. So it's a very nuanced issue, and we want to make sure that we're taking a thoughtful approach here, but blindly annexing land outside of the UGB is not the way that FOF thinks it should be done. Yeah. Anything else? Any other topics we want to talk about? There's a lot going on this session. I think something that flew under the radar a little bit, but we were excited to see, was a study bill. I think it originated in the Senate to conduct a study on the impact of PFAS, forever chemicals, spread on agricultural land. And that study, I do believe that it passed out of the House as well, and we will have more research done on the impact of PFAS and how long it lives in agricultural soils, or what it does to agricultural soils when you're talking about growing. That study was amended to say that it will only be conducted on land that does not grow food for human consumption. So maybe I don't know what that implication means. We were not part of that conversation, but any more research on that and how its presence in the soil impacts the plant life that we're cultivating on top of it, I think is a good thing. So I'm excited to see the results from that study once it's conducted. Cool. Well, the last thing that I want to say is that we are knee deep in our policy creation process for 2025 and subsequently 2026. Every biennium, we as FOF do a series of focus groups and surveys to help give entry points for farmers and community members to shape the policies that we work on. So our survey, we finished our focus groups. Thank you if you participated in any of those. And our survey is open until March 15th. And what I've been telling people is that FOF is a limited bandwidth organization, and we have a commitment to be directly driven by our farmers. So if it's not in the survey and it didn't come up in the focus group and no one has ever said it's a problem for them, we're not going to work on it. So if there's a problem or an opportunity that you want to make us aware of to make sure that the state takes advantage of, if it's an opportunity for like matching federal funds or something like that, or if there's a problem that you want us to try to fix with legislation, either on a state or county level, we would love to hear about it. So please do fill out the survey. It's a little bit of a hefty survey, so it takes about 15 to 20 minutes to fill out, especially if you're a farmer, because we have a commitment to be farmer driven. If you identify yourself as a farmer, you are the ones who get to answer the policy questions, and If you're not a farmer, there are questions about community engagement that we would love your opinion on as well. And then the results of that are going to be combined with our focus group results, and we will be presenting our biannual policy report, or biennial, sorry, it's not twice a year, it's every 2 years. Our biennial policy report in June. So look out for that release. Some really great stuff will be in there. And yeah, oh, the survey. We know there's a lot of surveys out there. There's so many to take, but we are committed to making it worth it for you. So every week we have $200 Visa gift cards to raffle. And so if you take the survey, you are eligible to win that. And if you don't win 1 week, it's not like we take your name out and only do new people. So the earlier you fill out the survey, the more chances that you have to win. I wish we could thank everybody who takes the survey, but we get several hundred responses, and that feels impossible. But 2 people a week. Yeah. All right. Yeah. Does anybody have any other questions or comments or frustrations? Oh, I guess I have one other thing to share. I know that a lot of you followed our work on SB 85 last session. That was the industrial agriculture regulations that started off as a factory farm moratorium and moved to regulation. They are finally convening the Rules Advisory Committee for that bill, and we will have some draft rules, I think, by the end of April to discuss. So I'm looking forward to those Rule Advisory Committee meetings, and we'll make sure that that is implemented the way it was intended. It's been a long time coming. Great. Well, I think that that's all I have for you this week. Oh, yeah. So, yes, Kathleen, the issue of raw milk and the reason and folks getting dropped from their insurance for using the legal avenues that we have here in Oregon definitely has come up on the survey and in the focus groups. And that was the main driver for us to request a pathway to legal retail sales through a licensing program at ODA last session. It's definitely still in play, but we are not going to take any action on that until 2025 at the earliest. Because there is also a pending lawsuit from some farmers in our network. We did not participate in the lawsuit or know it was happening, but the farmers from Cast Iron Farm and Godspeed Hollow, along with 2 goat dairies, are currently suing ODA about the CAFO program expansion to include 1 and 2 cow dairies. So we are monitoring very closely and don't have any updates as of now, but it's definitely still in play. Excuse me. Great. Hi, Beth. Of course, yeah. Thank you all for coming. And I think that's all the updates that I have for you. But yeah, feel free to hang out or take yourselves off mute, or we have this room open until 1 p.m. So anything you want to talk about, we can stop the recording though.